Random House Audio presents S is for Silence by Sue Grafton. Read for you by Judy, Kaye. S is for Silence. Liza, Saturday, July 4th, 1953. When Liza Mellencamp thinks about the last time she ever saw Violet Sullivan, what comes most vividly to mind is the color of Violet's Japanese silk kimono. A shade of blue that Liza later learned was called cerulean, a word that wasn't even in her vocabulary when she was 14 years old. A dragon was embroidered in satin stitch across the back, its strange dog-shaped face and arched body picked out in lime green and orange. Flames twisted from the dragon's mouth in curling ribbons of blood red. That last night, she'd arrived at the Sullivans' house at 6. Violet was going out at 6:15, and as usual, she wasn't dressed and hadn't done her hair. The front door was open, and as Liza approached, Baby, Violet's 3-month-old buff-colored Pomeranian, started yapping in a shrill little doggy voice while she pawed at the screen, punching holes here and there. Someone had given Violet the dog less than a month before, and she developed a fierce attachment to it, carrying the dog around in a big straw tote. Liza knocked on the doorframe, a sound barely audible above the dog's yap, yap, yap. Violet called out, "Come on in. I'm in the bedroom." Liza opened the screen door, pushed the dog aside with her foot, and walked into the living room to the bedroom Violet and her husband Foley shared. Liza knew for a fact that Foley often ended up sleeping on the couch, especially when he'd been drinking, which he did almost every day, and even more especially after he'd busted Violet in the chops and she'd stopped speaking to him for 2 days or however long it was. Baby pattered into the bedroom behind her, a fluff ball of nervous energy with a party favor of a tail. She was too small to jump up on the bed, so Liza scooped her up and put her there. Violet's tow-headed daughter, Daisy, was lying on the bed reading the Little Lulu comic Liza had given her the last time she sat, which was the night before last. Liza took a seat on the only chair in the room. Earlier in the day, when she'd stopped by, there had been 2 brown paper bags sitting on the chair. Violet said it was stuff going to the Goodwill, but Liza recognized a couple of Violet's favorite things and thought it was odd that she'd give away her best clothes. Now the brown bags were gone, and Liza knew better than to mention them. Violet didn't like questions. Violet was sitting on the bench at her makeup table, wearing the bright blue kimono with a dragon across the back. As Liza watched, Violet loosened the tie and shrugged the wrap aside so she could examine a bruise the size of Foley's fist that sat above one breast. Violet wasn't at all self-conscious about Liza seeing her undressed. Often when Liza came to sit, Violet would emerge from the bathroom naked, having dropped the towel so she could dab behind her knees with the violet cologne she used. Liza's gaze was irresistibly drawn to the sight of Violet's body. No matter where she went, eyes were drawn to her. Her hair was dyed an astonishing shade of red, more orange than red and not even intended to look real. Her eyes were a clear green, and the lipstick she wore was a pinky rose shade. Her waist was small, and her breasts were plump, drooping slightly like sacks filled nearly to capacity with sand. Liza's boobs were barely sufficient for her double-A brassiere, though Ty would close his eyes and start breathing hard every time he felt her up. After they kissed for a while, even if she resisted, he'd find a way to unbutton her shirt, nudging aside her bra strap so he could cup a budding breast in his palm. In her church youth group, the pastor's wife often lectured the girls about heavy petting, which was not recommended, as it was the quickest road to sexual intercourse and other forms of loose behavior. Liza's best friend, Kathy, was currently taking up with the moral rearmament movement, which preached absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. The last was the one that appealed to Liza. She and Ty had started dating in April, though their contact was limited. He couldn't let his aunt hear about it because of things that happened at his last school. Violet liked going out, and Liza babysat Daisy 3 and 4 times a week. Foley was gone most nights, drinking beer at the Blue Moon, which was the only bar in town. He worked construction, and at the end of the day he needed to wet his whistle, was how he put it. He said he wasn't about to stay home babysitting Daisy, and Violet certainly had no intention of sitting around the house with her while Foley was out having fun. Breast inspection complete, Violet shrugged herself back into the kimono and asked, "How's that boyfriend of yours?" "Fine." "You be careful. You know he's not supposed to date. At his last school, some girl got herself in trouble, if you get my drift." "I know. He told me he felt sorry for her. So he did her the big favor of screwing her. Take it from me, you can't trust a guy who's hell-bent on getting in your pants." "Even if he loves you?" "Especially if he loves you. And worse if you love him." Liza watched while Violet hung the kimono on a hook on the inside of the closet door. She was wearing sheer white nylon underpants, but hadn't bothered with a bra. She pulled on a lavender and white polka-dot sundress that zipped up the back. Liza had to help her with that. She asked, "What time are the fireworks?" "Whenever it gets dark." "I'm guessing 9, Violet said. "Are you and Foley coming home right afterward?" "Nah, we'll probably stop by the Moon." Liza wasn't sure why she bothered to ask. It was always like that. They'd get home at 2 a.m., Liza, dazed and groggy, would collect her $4 and then walk home through the dark. Violet took the bulk of her hair, twisted it, and held it high on her head, showing the effect. "What do you think? Up or down? It's still hotter than blue blazes." "Down's better." Violet smiled. "Vanity over comfort. Glad I taught you something." She dropped her hair, shaking it out so the weight of it went swinging across her back. That was the sequence Liza remembered, beginning, middle, and end. It was like a short loop of film that ran over and over. Daisy reading her comic book, Violet naked, and then being zipped into the polka-dot sundress. Violet lifting her bright red hair and then shaking it out. The thought of Ty Eddings was wedged in there somewhere because of what happened later. The only other brief moment that stayed with her was a time jump of maybe 20 minutes. Liza was in the cramped, not quite clean bathroom with its moldy-smelling towels. Daisy, her fine blonde hair caught up in a barrette, was taking her bath. Liza was already bored because babysitting was tedious once Violet left the house. She did it only because Violet asked, and who could turn her down? The Sullivans didn't have a television set. The Kramers were the only family in town who owned one. Liza and Kathy watched TV almost every afternoon, though lately Kathy had been sulky, in part because of Ty and in part because of Violet. If Kathy had her way, she and Liza would spend every waking minute together. Kathy had been fun at first, but now Liza felt like she was suffocating. Liza leaned over and swished a hand in the bathwater. Once she had Daisy bathed and in her baby doll pajamas, she'd give her the pill Violet left for her whenever she went out. Violet opened the door and stuck her head in, holding Baby in her arms. "Hey, Liz, I'm off. See you kids later." Daisy tilted her face up, puckering her lips. "Kiss." Violet said, "Kiss, kiss from here, honey bunch. This lipstick's fresh and Mama doesn't want it messed up. You be good now and do everything Liza says." Violet blew Daisy a kiss. Daisy pretended to catch it and then blew it back, her eyes shining at the sight of her mother, who was looking radiant. Liza waved, and as the door closed, a waft of violet cologne entered the room on a wisp of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?